So yeah, I'm going to talk about the sampler, the history of the sampler, and later on how I feel in terms of the music I like, how it's helped kind of shape a bit of a musical scene, especially through its later days. So, like everything else, start from the beginning. Harry Chamberlain is a certified Don because he created the first sampler, and I think that's pretty damn cool. And look at him, he looks mafia-like anyway. So yeah, he created the first, sort of officially the first sampler, which was the Chamberlain in 1946, giving you a pretty picture. But what I thought was even cooler, which I didn't realise until yesterday, was he actually created the first drum machine as well. Which, you know, because the Chamberlain kind of got stolen, really, got taken away from him, and so he created the Chamberlain Rhythm Mate, which I've got a little video for, but yeah, it's the sort of first drum machine of its kind. It paved the way for the many that were to follow afterwards. It did have a very short career, 700 were sold, but 2 years later in 1949 he came up with this little bad boy, but only 10 were ever made. So let's have a listen, let's see what it sounds like. How do you do that thing where you slang? Too late. But yeah, I thought this was cool. Came with 12 different presets of drum sounds, all run off tape, and you could alter the sound by speeding up or slowing down the tape. So it's got all the sounds you get on your standard keyboard. They do that bossa nova thing, they do the swing thing, but that was kind of cool. We all know about the Mellotron. I'm not going to harp on about it, but yeah, so nearly a decade on, the Mellotron came out, which was the sort of the first big commercial sampler. Everyone started using it. It was in the charts in like a really big way. So you've got, you know, Bowie, Yes, the Beatles loved it, the Moody Blues loved it. The earlier models had a fault where basically the tape heads, from the way they're being used, would wear up very quickly, so they later on developed a model which had movable tape heads that could slide across. Synclavier, 1975, it was the first sort of digital sampler, I suppose, that we produced. The rest were using analog tape. This was a digital sampler. This changed the scene massively because it allowed, for the first time, producers, writers, musicians to be able to create sounds that had never really been heard before. It actually sounds pretty good considering how...
We'll call it the piano. This is 13 samples of a Steinway grand piano. We can do things to it that we were previously able to do with synthesizers. Might chorus it a little bit. Could change the envelope of it.
Now, you get the gist. Putting the same slide there. That's good. Shortly after, they had the Fairlight CM1. It was designed in 1979 by Peter Vogel and Kim Rai. It was based on a 6800 microprocessor, and it started making a name for itself throughout the early 80s. It was the main competitor with the Synclavier sample. However, it did have an ace up its sleeve when it came to staying ahead of the game, because it had what's it called? It had a thing called sort of pager software, which I don't know if you've seen it, where we saw a video on it with Mark last time, where you could actually draw in your notes and patterns with a sort of special Star Warsy sort of funky looking pen, which I thought that was kind of good. Nothing, it'd never been that interactive before. That was quite a big jump, I think, in terms of technology. Well, like I said, the major downfall was that it was so expensive that the average man would have to remortgage his house, sell it, then move into a cardboard box before you could afford to buy it. So, that it being so expensive, because it cost about £70,000. Oh, I've got an example here of it being played, sorry. No, I haven't. I did have one and I forgot to put it up there. Oh, well. Found some Herbie Hancock playing on it. It sounded quite cool. So shortly afterwards came the EMU emulator, which was, although it was £8,000, it was considerably a lot cheaper than the Fairlight, and there wasn't that much competition around at the time. It did very well. It had a kind of new, unique design. It was using floppy disk for the first time as well. I don't think anything had used floppy disk beforehand, so they had these great big floppy disks that they could cut into there. It was designed by Apple, so they made it all funky and blue. It had it boasted having 8 voices. It had a 2-second sample time and a 8-bit processor. But sort of at the time, that was sort of taking over the game. That did quite well. He tried to bring out the Audity, which again was so massively expensive that they only actually sold one because nobody bothered to buy it. But the software, although the Audity was better than the emulator, it didn't sell, but the software was then later on used, so the Audity's multi-timbral designs went into the creation of sample playback proto synthesizers, which in turn paved the way for Audity in the future. And then it starts getting a little bit more modern, so we had the Akai bringing out the first rack-mounted sampler. It had 8 seconds of sample time, and sort of that was at the lowest rate, but we've gone up from 8-bit to 12-bit sampling rates, which was quite a big bit of improvement from what we had before. They then brought out the S900, which, although it was still a 12-bit sampler, but it had a maximum sample time of 63 seconds at the lower rate. But this was the first rack-mounted sampler that you could have with a keyboard, I think. And it was a lot easier to use than the previous Akai product that had been out. And it had 8 voices. It was a lot better for stereo, for multi-track recording, and some people still use it today. And then we kind of come to the more modern MPCs, which stem from sort of 97 to present day. The design hasn't really changed that much on them, only the amount of memory each one has. But what I thought, the way the MPC was so good when it was, for it to be an external sort of sampler piece of hardware, was you could have an MPC and not need to have a studio. You can cut, you can time stretch, you can edit, you can loop in the MPCs, which you could on previous samplers, but not that well. It was a studio built within itself. And as the MPC sort of developed, it's been used a lot more as an instrument as well, as a live piece of kit that people have been taking out onto the stage, playing with, making tunes. it's kind of gone hand in hand with turntablism. So people like DJ Format, DJ Yoda. I mean, I've got a video here, and Cut Chemist, Aphex Twin. I've all used them, but not just as samplers, but as a live sort of sample time instrument. And let's have a look at what we've got here. So yeah, here's just an example of what these guys have done with it, really.
You ready on the rocks? I'm ready over here. Yo, fellas! Rock this mother!
Excuse the sound quality, but those are showing how like the samplers have changed. They're using those, and they look like they were using the MPC XL sort of 2000, which is, it's an old piece of kit, but yet they're still able to program in those samples, cut them all up on the spot, and turn them into free instruments, whether you like the style or not. It still sounded pretty damn cool. So that's the history of the sampler to today.